Lian had a hangover once, but woke up and became a fake eunuch in the Liang Empire. Relying on one's ancestral legacy to make a living, even the Empress and Empress couldn't stop. One night later, both the Emperor and Empress became my women. From now on, play the harem and dominate the world. There are also 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, 70.2 concubines. Xiao Anzi, the Empress is coming tonight. Please prepare for it. It's been a long time since Consort Shu had a romantic relationship, it's just her tonight. How about Mr. Su tonight? Empress. Tonight, you don't have to spoil the harem. Why? I'm not the emperor tonight, just your woman. The previous dynasty was full of twists and turns, with hidden currents surging. Only I, Zhao An, was drunk and lying on the knees of a beautiful woman, wielding the power of life and death. Jiangshan, beautiful women, they are all mine. Chapter 1. Traverse, died in Novice village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the palace of Daliang, red candles sway and ambiguous sounds continue. Listening to the symphony that has been unbroken for 3 days and 3 nights, everyone lowered their heads, blushed, and looked like quails one by one. For a long time, accompanied by a burst of low cheers, a beautiful figure walked out wearing a veil. Under the light, the woman's eyebrows and eyes were picturesque, and her seductive body was faintly visible inside the thin veil like cicada wings. At this moment, the beautiful woman's cheeks were rosy and she was sweating profusely. Without asking, she knew that she was the woman who had just emerged from the clouds and rain. Emperor. The palace maid who was serving immediately stepped forward and supported the woman's shaky body. Who would have thought that the person in front of me was Emperor Liang Qingyun of the Liang dynasty? What's even more unexpected is that Liang Qingyun is still a woman. The palace maid looked at the ambiguous red marks on Liang Qingyun's body and hesitated. Your Majesty, you. Liang Qingyun's sharp eyes flickered and he said, Why, do you think that my behavior is debauchery and disrespectful to the reputation of the royal family? The palace maid was so frightened that she immediately knelt down on the ground and said with a trembling body, I dare not, I dare not. I know that now, with strong enemies both inside and outside, you must leave a royal bloodline for the sake of the country's foundation, and only then will you choose a thief to associate with him. This is also a last resort. You are sacrificing yourself for the country. Liang Qingyun turned around and looked at the man lying on the bed with a dim glint in his eyes. I don't know how this thief broke into the palace. I accidentally bumped into my daughter's body, and Liang Qingyun's face turned red again when he thought of the thief secretly peeking at his body that night. Finding a good citizen to have a son from outside has been something she has been pondering for a long time, but for a woman, such a thing requires courage after all. Just as she was undecided for a long time, suddenly such a thief appeared, perhaps. It was really the will of heaven. At this moment, the Grand Tutor Li Zhong stepped forward and whispered, Your Majesty, 3 days have passed, and the medicinal effects on this person are gone. Regardless of whether this pregnancy prescription can hit you at once or not, this person cannot be left behind. Liang Qingyun took a deep breath and said, All right, take the person away. Remember, handle it thoroughly and never let the people of the Prime Minister's mansion find any trace. Your Majesty, rest assured that the old servant will handle this matter well. After Li Zhong finished speaking, he stared at Liang Juan's pretty face and pondered for a while, then called a few attendants to carry away Lian, who was still in the clouds and mist. The road inside the palace was long, and these 2 people were lifted up in a rough and bumpy manner. Soon, An Li felt very uncomfortable in his stomach. Hey, don't shake it, Buddy can't drink anymore, Buddy is going to vomit. The 2 eunuchs smiled at the words and said, Hey Buddy, when you enter this clean room, you'll be your sisters from now on. An Li opened his eyes in a daze and heard the 3 figures in the clean room, his heart thumping. Clean room. Isn't the place where they drink called Yunhai Hotel? Isn't a private room called Heaven and Earth? What does a clean room mean? Suddenly, An Li's brain pricked, and various memories flooded in like a tide. In just a few seconds, after An Li opened his eyes again, he understood everything. He has traveled. This Lian was originally a famous flower-picking thief in the martial arts world, and his appearance was inferior to Panin. However, he was discovered stealing from the palace and was drugged and taken to the palace to become a stallion. Then An Li, this unlucky guy, wore it and fought for 3 days and 3 nights, almost ruining himself. And now, just after receiving this information, I am about to be castrated. Damn it, how could it be so miserable? An Li let out a helpless roar. In a moment of contemplation, the person has already been carried to the purification room. As soon as I entered, I saw a huge wooden stool inside the clean room, with blood stains on it. There are various sizes and models of bamboo tubes hanging on this beam, and there are also many pottery jars next to them. What's inside here, there's no need to say more. They are all good brothers of men. Be honest. These 2 little attendants pressed An Li onto the wooden stool, and then clasped his hands and feet in the iron ring connected to the stool, instantly rendering An Li motionless. Wang Gonggang, I'm sorry to trouble you. Our master has instructed us to clean up the person. Even if someone who shouldn't have discovered us later discovers us, we won't suspect that we're just a eunuch in the palace. It's easy to give us our identity. Alright, I'm going to handle miscellaneous matters. I'll call you master and rest assured. Then let's wait outside. Go ahead, after I finish cooking this, I'll go give him a knife. Lian listened to their conversation next to him and felt a chill in his pants. If you say this facility is really rudimentary, there are no disinfection tools, no partition curtains are installed between wooden benches, and there are still large areas of blood on the ground that haven't been cleared in time. The large red areas are painful to look at. Can you still survive with this knife? An Li shouted. Wang Gonggang wiped the knife with a wet handkerchief and casually said, it all depends on one's fate. If you take this knife and get it, you'll be the people next to the master. If you can't get it, you'll be rootless lonely ghosts. Wang Gonggang is probably an old hand in the palace. With a tear, a big hole was torn in the middle of these pants. An Li instantly felt a gust of fresh air blowing under his pants. Grandpa. Dad. Grandpa. Can we discuss it? I can give you anything, please let me go. The prince chuckled lightly and said, what can you give me? Lian paused. Damn it, there really is nothing. Others travel with golden fingers, but they don't have any protagonist aura. Although he is a thief, he has nothing good. Poor and penniless. Alright, stop talking nonsense. It's just a one-size-fits-all deal. I have other matters to attend to. A cold light flashed, and the blade reflected on An Li's sweaty face. An Li's heart has completely cooled down. After finishing the calf, I couldn't even leave the novice village, so I sent it. Chapter 2 is a dead end. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wang Gonggang, the Empress has something to say. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the door. Wang Gonggang's knife did not fall due to this sound. Seeing that the Empress had sent this person, she didn't dare to stay any longer. Without hesitation, she turned to An Li and said, stay honest and wait until I finish my work and come back to take care of you. An Li was panting heavily, feeling like he had survived a disaster. He lowered his head and glanced at his brother, difficult brother, difficult brother. I didn't expect to have such a chance to catch his breath when he was on the brink of death. It seems like this is a chance given to him by heaven. He can't just sit idly by. Lian looked around and suddenly remembered that as a professional thief, he often had a silver needle inserted into his wrist clothes. He held the silver needle in his hand and poked it into the lock hole, only to hear a snap as the lock opened. An Li suddenly felt that he was not useless as a thief, and at the critical moment, he really saved his life. An Li reached out and brought the pottery jar of his brother, who was an unknown good friend, to his side. Later, he took off his clothes and spread them on the ground, soaked in a lot of blood, and then changed clothes with this person to wear. After finishing all this here, I heard the voice of a man coming from outside. The two eunuchs dressed up walked in and saw the person lying upside down on the stool. Without much thought, they just carried him away. The two of them carried him to a thatched cottage and almost threw him on the ground like garbage before he left. After waiting for a moment, Liang saw that there was no movement around him and immediately got up, charging out regardless. He was completely scared out of his wits and didn't know where to go. Anyway, he was crawling and jumping out with blood all over his body. Who knew, as we walked, we turned back 3 times, and finally Duan hit a cotton ball with a single sound. Ouch! The woman in front fell to the ground and shouted loudly. Empress, are you okay? An Li's mind was so full of meat and vegetables that before he could fully recover, he heard, this dog's slave. Someone, come and catch him, throw him out to feed the dog. As the words fell, a long knife hung over An Li's neck. How come this is not over? How come going anywhere is a death? Can we solve the problem in a civilized way? Just a second before the knife fell, An Li had another flash of inspiration and pointed at the woman in front of him, saying, Empress, I know your destiny. Wait a minute. The woman in front of her was seductive, and with the help of her maid, she approached and looked up and down at Liang. What is the gate of destiny in this palace? Oh, could you tell me? Liang lowered his voice and said, well. Naturally that's the taste. That one. That. Which one? That, said An Li, the taste of being a woman. As the words fell, the Empress's face instantly turned red. You. How dare you treat this palace like this? You pervert. Empress, I'll kill this dog servant now. The person next to me immediately expressed loyalty. Wait a minute. The Empress raised her hand, took a deep breath, and said for a while, tie this dog servant back to the Golden Feather Palace. No one is allowed to speak up about tonight's matter. Yes. An Li was once again tied up. In the Queen's palace. An Li carefully looked at the beautiful woman in front of him, and it must be said that Zhao Qinyu, the daughter of Prime Minister Zhao Qingru, is truly a person as her name suggests. She looks like a sunken fish and fallen geese, with a closed moon and shy flowers. If it were an ordinary man, even Zhao Qingru, who was in power, would not be able to hold on to such a worldly beauty. Unfortunately, the person Zhao Qinyu encountered was not a man, but an empress. This is not as good as a eunuch. At least eunuchs still have a weak heart, this empress is simply powerless without a heart. How do you know? The Empress paused for a moment and continued, this palace has not had any sexual intercourse with the Emperor for many years. Nonsense. An Li cursed in his heart because I just got out of your man's bed. Your man's falling red is all caused by me. Where are you going? But you can't say that either. If I tell this truth myself, I'm afraid it will cause a lot of trouble. This little brat, must not be able to survive. I am a servant. Before An Li had figured out how to make it up, a palace maid walked in and leaned over to the Empress, saying, the identity of this person has been verified, it seems to be from the Emperor's side. Who? Your Majesty. Yes, I went to ask. I just recorded that it was a person brought out by Duke Li from the Imperial Palace. The Queen waved her hand and looked at An Li on the ground with a complex expression. Are you a person next to the Emperor? I just found out, An Li muttered softly. He just came over from the Emperor and ended up going back to die again. Why is it just this size? No wonder you know that this palace has never been with the Emperor. The Empress took a deep breath. Even you servants know, I'm afraid the people below don't know how to laugh at me. The more the Queen thought, the more angry she became. The grievances and frustration of these years surged up in an instant. Dog servant, this palace has killed you. Let you dog servants laugh at me from behind. Empress. An Li shouted loudly, I have a way, I have a way. What method is it? Oh, it's not possible. Please be gentle. It's comfortable. Please slow down. The queen's bed curtain emitted waves of moans. Lian lightly tapped several acupoints on the empress's face, and a slight blush began to appear on her face. Her body also began to wriggle restlessly. As An Li's fingers lightly tapped up and down on the empress's body, the woman gradually began to uncontrollably tug at her clothes. Crisp breasts exposed, lotus arms and delicate legs, seductive eyes like silk, particularly attractive. The brother, who was still feeling a bit scared and lethargic in the clean room just now, immediately became energized. If we say that this empress is truly a national beauty and heavenly fragrance, her beauty cannot be underestimated. It would be a waste of time to leave her in this harem. Lian thought and unconsciously wiped some oil with her hand. The empress seemed to notice and looked up at Lian, but there was no anger in her eyes. It was more like wanting to refuse and still welcoming coquettishness. An Li hesitated for a moment, thinking that he would try to restrain himself a bit, but didn't want to wait for the next second. However, the empress grabbed her hand and pressed it against her, looking obsessed and happy. An Li was momentarily confused. Sure enough, this woman who has not eaten meat for a long time is still very scary when she starts eating meat. For a long time, the empress blushed, her face covered in thin sweat, and she barely propped up her soft body, looking at Lian with a face full of spring. I didn't expect that you, a lackey, still have this ability. I didn't expect it either, said An Li. These are all the skills that his host possesses, all the miscellaneous things he has learned from wandering in the martial arts world over the years. He has already saved 2 lives. The empress closed her eyes and thought that she could only use this method to send loneliness. She couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. Then her eyes suddenly lit up. You say, the emperor never had the pleasure of being a concubine, is it because he doesn't understand the joy in it? An Li was bewildered. He is not right. She understands. That's too much to understand. Chapter 3. I don't want to come back either. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The empress looked around and then said to Lian, you are a person next to the emperor. Following that high-ranking official is nothing more than serving as a pawn, just a minor. No, I followed my palace. My palace guards your prosperity and status. In this palace, no one dares to touch you. An Li knows that this queen is not bragging. At present, the Liang claims that the world belongs to the Liang family, but in reality, the aristocratic party led by Prime Minister Zhao Qingru and the Emperor of the Liang divide the world. The descendants of the Liang family have withered away. If it weren't for the care of the Empress Dowager's relatives, they would have been devoured alive long ago. The queen said these words with confidence. An Li thought to himself that if he went to the palace, he would have to have a support, otherwise this place would easily take the lives of him and his old brother, which is not a problem. What, you're not willing? No, how could it be? An Li smiled and said, I am a eunuch. Being able to win the favor of the Empress is truly a blessing in my life. In the future, I will devote myself wholeheartedly to serving as the Empress and die. The Empress nodded satisfied and then stood up, feeling somewhat disappointed. Your demeanor, if it weren't for a eunuch. It's a pity. After the queen finished speaking, she turned around and said, someone, secretly escort him back to the emperor's side to serve. Remember, take some time every day to tell me about the emperor's daily life and whereabouts. Either investigate why the emperor is not close to women, or take some time to let him also experience the taste of this earthly paradise. Lian followed behind the eunuch, trembling as he walked. Although he had received the queen's golden words to save his life, he could not go to the emperor's side and say, your wife said she wants to save my life. You can do whatever you want. The emperor is fighting against the noble family. He said, isn't this seeking death? Besides, if that queen knew that she was not a eunuch, but a pure man, and gave her a massage, and looked at most of her body, she would not turn him into a real sisters. The more Liang pondered, the more he felt that it was not possible. In late autumn, he was still sweating profusely. Waiting for the place, all the clothes on my body were soaked through. There's no one serving tea here. A female official at the door looked anxious. Oh, it was a timely move. All the decent people were transferred by the Empress Dowager. They were well chosen to prepare for the general election in the future. Who knew that the Prime Minister would come? The female official serving tea was sweating anxiously. According to the rules of Daliang, those who serve in person must be individuals with a dignified appearance, especially those who serve tea to powerful officials and envoys. Those who are crooked and have split dates cannot come forward. When this person turned around, he happened to see Ang Li. Hey, are you from the imperial palace? Upon hearing this, Ang Li nodded. Just you, go and serve tea to the emperor and the prime minister. No matter how late it is, the tea will be cold. After speaking, he didn't give Ang Li a chance to speak at all, so he stuffed the tea tray into Ang Li's hand and pushed him directly in. I have no choice but to die. Sooner or later is to die, and I can only grit my teeth. Liang lowered his head, almost retracting his neck into his stomach, and reached out to place the tea on the table. Perhaps due to nervousness, this hand couldn't stop trembling, and the tea lid made a subtle clang sound because of the trembling. The emperor turned his eyes in displeasure and was about to reprimand, but when he turned his head, he saw Liang's face. How could it be him? Ang Li smiled awkwardly, his eyes constantly wandering around. Is it okay for the emperor to come in and have a dragon body? In front of him, Prime Minister Zhao Qingru sat upright in a brown robe, not angry but majestic. The emperor has not yet emerged from the impact brought by Liang. Everything is fine with me. Please take care of me, my dear. Aiqing has been returning from the northwest all the way, tired from the boat and car. Why not rest well and come back tomorrow to greet her? Zhao Qingru said in a deep voice, old body, this old bone, can last for 2 years. It's just a matter of sacrificing for the country, and it's not enough to sacrifice for the emperor. However, the emperor's dragon body is the foundation of the country. The emperor has also ascended the throne for 3 years, but he has not seen a concubine in the harem pregnant. The old minister knows that as a vassal, saying such words is disrespectful. But for the sake of the country's foundation, I have to say, Your Majesty, do not hesitate to seek medical treatment. Liang listened beside, unable to even press down the corners of his mouth. The meaning of this old prime minister is that the emperor is not capable, let him see a doctor. But there's no problem, it really doesn't work. The emperor forced a smile to the corner of his mouth. I understand your hard work, but I have already asked the people from the hospital to take care of you. I think it will not be long. The emperor glanced at Liang beside him and said, there will be a dragon born soon. Zhao Qingru sneered, if you ask me, the emperor has been childless for 3 years, and those mediocre talents from the imperial hospital are hard to blame. When I was visiting the northwest, I happened to encounter a miraculous doctor from the northern region who was well versed in sexual intercourse and the art of nurturing offspring. Upon hearing this, I brought this person back and assigned him to be specifically responsible for the emperor's body. Well, that's not necessary, The emperor couldn't help but refuse, and Zhao Qingru clapped his hands. Immediately, a beautiful woman dressed in a foreign race entered the door. This woman looks just like the demonic Medusa. As soon as she entered, the woman glanced at Ang Li with a strange luster in her eyes, and then turned her head to salute the emperor. Emperor Wanan. The emperor was already 1 head and too big at this time. Get up now. Aiqing, I am well aware of Aiqing's hard work, but... Your Majesty. Zhao Qingru stood up, I am like this for no other reason, only for the sake of the emperor and the country. I hope the emperor can also be obedient, and through this person's mediation, we can have an imperial heir with the empress as soon as possible. An Li secretly expressed surprise in his heart. This old thing is amazing. Tell the emperor to be obedient. He also called for a baby with his daughter. Just as they were fighting fiercely in bed, he was commanding beside them. Unfortunately, Lian looked at the emperor sweating profusely and immediately felt amused. Isn't this difficult for her? She really wants it. Alright, you all go down. After seeing off Xiao Qingru, the emperor was clearly in a bad mood. You, stop. An Li, give it a wake-up call. He slowly turned back and met the emperor's gloomy face. You're so bold. I'm still sending people to catch you everywhere, how dare you come back? Lian immediately knelt on the ground and said, I don't want to come back either. The queen forced me to come back. What can I do? Who, Empress? Chapter 4. Putting ducks on the shelf. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. An Li honestly explained how he got out of the clean place and bumped into the Empress. Of course, there are also some details hidden in between. For example, giving the queen a massage and pressing the high button. After all, although the queen thought he was a sister's, Liang Qingyun knew he was a real man. It's better to say less about this kind of thing. After all, she is also a nominal wife. Who knows, he's just overthinking what he thinks. Liang Qingyun couldn't bear it in his heart. The matter has come to an end, you can only go ahead. Lian choked halfway through his breath and almost choked himself to death. What? Let me go. Now that old man Zhao Qingru has asked me and the queen to round the house. He even sent eyeliner to me, so he can't drag it any longer. Lian frowned and said, then I can't go, can I? Who will do it if you don't do it? Liang Qingyun grabbed Lian and said, now in the palace, besides his personal palace maids, there are also Li Zhong and the Empress Dowager. Only you know that I am a daughter. Can I treat it as not knowing? Stop talking nonsense. Liang Qingyun's beautiful eyes narrowed and he put on a fierce look. If you sneak into the palace, handle affairs for the Empress, and even dare to monitor me, you'll lose your head 10 times on any of these things. Lian looked up, wanting to cry without tears. Although the queen's figure and face are indescribable. But this identity is deadly. If the queen discovers it, her life will be in danger. Even if this emperor comes forward, it may not be effective. Of course, I won't treat you unfairly either. You're good to do, I promise. Prosperity and wealth are inseparable from you. An Li feels like he's just drawing pancakes. Your Majesty, Li Zhong hurriedly ran over at this moment, the Empress's men have just arrived. At this moment, what are you doing here? They said they heard that Lord Zhao had brought a divine doctor, so they called over and wanted to show the Empress the body. Liang Qingyun's face instantly turned white. This miraculous doctor was brought here just to please Empress Dowager. What's the point of looking at his body? He's really impatient. Lian looked at Liang Qingyun and touched his nose. Isn't it impatient? The Empress's small river has been dry for so many years, and it should be nourished and nourished now. Ordinary women, who can bear this? I can't quench my thirst by sneaking, please tell me. As soon as the words fell, on the other end, the Empress's people turned back. It's so late, what's the matter with the Empress? The Empress said in a deep voice. To report to the Emperor, the Empress said that the weather was about to dry out, so she personally cooked pear soup and wanted to invite the Emperor to come and taste it. The Empress coughed and said, since you're all here, why don't you bring it to me? Your Majesty, you may not know that this pear soup has medicinal properties. As they spoke, the person raised their eyes and gave the Empress a meaningful glance. It was the doctor invited by the Prime Minister who said it was pear soup. It's best to drink it in the room for 2 people. If you drink it alone outside the room, the medicinal properties will disappear. Lian's eyes twitched as he listened. Are you drinking pear soup or hallucinogenic drugs? The Empress pretended to be calm and said in a deep voice, I understand. You can go down. Your Majesty, the person who came was not willing to let go. The Prime Minister's beauty is something that the Emperor must not disappoint. I said I know. Get lost. Lian watched as the visitor left and really wanted to go with her. The Empress sat on the dragon chair, with a circle of fine beads of sweat on her forehead. You, come here. An Li reluctantly leaned in. Tonight, it seems that the Empress is in a certain position to win. I can't hide anymore. Or, to put it another way, he doesn't want to avoid being so anxious every day. Why don't we have a good time? You come with me, and when the time comes, I will find a way to make this pear soup. Anyway, it's up to you on the phoenix bed tonight. Lian swallowed a mouthful of water and said, Can you not go, little one? You're talking. The Empress looked at his crotch with a threatening expression. The terrifying memories of the clean room struck, and An Li instantly stood at attention. Ensure completion of the task. Trembling and dragging all the way, he followed Liang Qingyun reluctantly back to the Empress's dormitory. An Li looked at it, it's still late at night now. But the Queen's sleeping hall is still brightly lit. In order to get this night's sleep, the Queen also fought hard. Upon seeing Liang Qingyun enter, Zhao Qinyu immediately stood up. She was wearing a pink veil, with a faintly visible belly pocket and lewd pants underneath. The whole body was dimly visible under the illumination of the candle. Lian looked at the round and plump waist that was about to come out, and suddenly lifted his head to prevent nosebleeds from flowing. To be honest, if I lose my head because of this, I would be a standard pervert who died under the peony flower. It's also worth it. As soon as he entered the door, Zhao Qinyu's body lay on Liang Qingyun's body and said, Your Majesty, how did you come down? I'm worried about waiting. It's getting late, why hasn't the Queen gone to bed yet? My concubine, aren't you waiting for the Emperor? If you can't wait for the Emperor, if you can't see him drinking this pear soup, I'm itching and can't sleep. Lian and Liang Qingyun looked up together. Your mother, what kind of words are these? Is this Queen so open? Isn't this ancient? The next second, the Empress's mouth curled up and she deliberately said in Liang Qingyun's ear, Your Majesty, what are you thinking? Holy crap, there really is a set. An Li couldn't help but sigh as he watched the Empress flirt with her mouth and rub against Liang Qingyun's chest with his own chest. How could this be reincarnated into the Prime Minister's mansion? I really lost a good flower queen in vain. Zhao Qinyu frowned slightly and said, Your Majesty, how many clothes are you wearing? How soft are you? Zhao Qinyu reached out to touch the Empress's chest. The latter quickly pushed Zhao Qinyu away. You should know, this is the soft meat that has been wrapped up for a long time and finally wrapped up. At a touch, it reveals its essence. Your Majesty, what's wrong with you? Zhao Qinyu sat down on the ground with a look of grievance on his face. Can I even touch you now? Empress, that's not what the Emperor meant. Lian quickly stepped forward and helped him up, thinking to himself, Do you understand and understand your husband? If he unties his chest, it will not be smaller than your two mantu. The Empress took a deep breath and tears of grievance in her eyes. Your Majesty, if you have any dissatisfaction with my concubine, just say, it's really not possible. You should depose me. It's better to hang my concubine like this and not let her serve you, becoming a true woman. Zhao Qinyu is completely impatient. I didn't mean that, Liang Qingyun quickly said. Emperor, Empress, it's time to drink pear soup. Lian turned around and saw the woman brought by Zhao Qingru from northern Xinjiang. Chapter 5. Sleeping out of official positions. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. The woman was seductive, holding a wooden plate with two soup bowls on top. From afar, one can immediately smell a faint fishy smell. Is this pear soup? An Li couldn't help but ask a question. Just leaned over to take a look, but was dodged by this woman. This father.in.law, I advise you to stay away, otherwise your lower body will ache at night and it will be uncomfortable. Lian immediately took a big step back. The woman stepped forward and placed a bowl of soup on one side in front of the Empress and Liang Qingyun. Lian clearly saw that Liang Qingyun's hands were trembling. There is no need to say much about the effect of drinking this thing. Zhao Qinyu wiped his tears and exchanged a glance with the female doctor beside him. Then he said to Liang Qingyun, Your Majesty, this pear used to make pear soup was specially brought back by my father, and it was prepared under the guidance of this divine doctor. Your Majesty, you can taste it and not let them down. Liang Qingyun took a deep breath and looked up to Zhao Qinyu, saying, Empress, I came to see you tonight because of the Prime Minister's wishes. Zhao Qinyu's hand paused slightly and looked at Liang Qingyun inexplicably. I am busy with national affairs and often overlook you. Tonight, when the Prime Minister mentioned the issue of heirs, I remembered how much I owe you. Tonight, there is only you and me, no one else. Let's cherish tonight's good night together. Upon hearing these words, Zhao Qinyu immediately stood up excitedly and said, Your Majesty, are you telling the truth? Emperor and Empress, why don't you drink the pear soup first? I can also take it out together. Bold. When will I and the Empress drink, and do you need to intervene? I'm not asking, I'm just worried that everyone has left and there's no one to serve the Empress and Emperor. The female doctor lowered her head and said. At this moment, Zhao Qinyu's eyes twitched slightly and he smiled, Yes, Emperor, let's drink. Let's go to bed earlier. The Empress looked at An Li, while the latter looked up at the ceiling. The moon should be quite round tonight. Emperor, drink it. Zhao Qinyu finished speaking, looked up and drank it all in one gulp, then stared at Liang Qingyun with keen eyes. Liang Qingyun swallowed a mouthful of water and looked up to drink it. With a bang, the cup hit the tray and said, Can we leave now? Everyone retreated one after another. Are you not leaving? The female doctor turned to look at An Li. He is my personal attendant, please keep him. The female doctor gave a complex glance at Lian and then walked out calmly. Your Majesty, the good time is short and bitter. Let's not let it down. Zhao Qinyu reached out and tugged at Liang Qingyun's waist belt, biting his red lips with his teeth. His face was already flushed. Looking at the Empress again. In just an instant, her cheeks turned red and her eyes became somewhat blurred. Damn it, this medicine is so powerful. Quick, blow. Blow candles. Liang Qingyun quickly shouted. Lian immediately ran and blew out all the candles in the hall. Your Majesty, I am here to serve you. Before entering the palace, I have learned many secret techniques and will surely serve you comfortably. The charming voice of Zhao Qinyu came from within. Immediately after, the Empress's muffled groans came, carrying the unique charm of a woman's love, as if she were a different person from the male voice who deliberately lowers himself to disguise himself. It's broken. An Li was not conscious and quickly ran over. As a result, he saw clothes lying on the ground. Zhao Qinyu was lying on top of the emperor, constantly touching his hands, his eyes tightly closed, and he was already confused. Looking at the Empress again, her clothes had been torn apart by Zhao Qinyu, revealing her white corset. But that figure was too beautiful, even wrapped around a corset, there was still a lot of fullness exposed in the air, ups and downs, especially eye-catching. What a beautiful scene is this! Lian quickly stepped forward and pulled Zhao Qinyu, who was holding on to the Empress's waist, away. He then picked up the Empress and placed her on the soft collapse on the other side. The next second, as soon as he turned around, Zhao Qinyu pounced. Your Majesty, don't leave. I really want to be a real woman once. I want to. Zhao Qinyu's medicinal effect has completely increased, and he can no longer distinguish who the person in front of him is. Zhao Qinyu was originally a beautiful woman with national charm and natural charm. Now that I have taken the medicine, my whole body turns red, and I speak coquettishly, pleading incessantly, which is particularly seductive. Lian knew that it was not enough not to turn in a grain tonight, so he also complied with his own wishes and reached out to report Zhao Qinyu to the nearby soft collapse. Zhao Qinyu flipped over and straddled on Lian's lower abdomen, his eyes hazy as he exhaled, "Your Majesty, I have been waiting for this moment for a long time." And An Li was completely unable to suppress his inner desire with such a teasing, as he forcefully pushed up from his waist and kneaded 2 clumps of cloud flesh with both hands. The top-quality pair wood collapsed, emitting the sound of aged and decaying wood. The creaking sound was particularly noticeable in this quiet night, and it persisted for a long time. 2 hours later, An Li struggled to get off Zhao Qinyu's bed with his waist on, wanting to pour himself a sip of water. But as soon as the cup reached his lips, An Li felt something was wrong. In the quiet hall, there were bursts of heavy breathing and occasional moans. "Is there anyone else inside here?" Lian followed the sound and saw the Empress on the soft collapse. "It's broken. I forgot there's another one." At this point, the person had already torn their clothes everywhere and was impatiently rubbing against the soft collapse. "Your Majesty, I still want to." On the bed, Zhao Qinyu woke up again and shouted in a daze. An Li had no choice but to throw the Empress along with her. Lian was sweating profusely and wanted to catch his breath. However, he placed a pair of white and tender hands on his left and right shoulders, pressing Lian directly onto the ground. With one woman at the top and the other at the bottom, An Li became completely a tool person, but these 2 people directly started self-help. The main focus is on self-reliance. At this moment, outside the hall, a group of maids lowered their heads, listening to the sound inside that had not stopped all night, both anxious and shy. "Doctor, are you going to go in and shout, 'Stop'? If this continues, it may not be good for the Empress's health, right?" An Li. "What's really bad is me. Does no one speak for me?" The female doctor turned around and a hint of suspicion flashed in her eyes. "Ah!" Suddenly, there was a sharp scream in the room, with a trembling ending that brought out many beautiful scenes just because of this voice. In theory. It's almost there. What's going on? Why is the sound starting to get louder again? Did you put in too much medicine when you prescribed it yourself? Maybe it's because I just tasted it for the first time, so I was a bit reckless. It's better not to disturb me. Seeing the female doctor say this, it's hard for everyone to say anything more. But this night was particularly lively, with shouts coming and going. The next day, the entire palace, and even the entire Daning, knew one thing. Last night, the emperor favored the empress, and it rained and rained all night. I also gave the emperor a proper name. The emperor is not only amazing, he is simply amazing, even ordinary male pets may not be able to compete with him. The combat effectiveness is extremely amazing. And the next day, you can still go to court with a clear and energetic mind. Even looking mentally better. After going down to court, the courtiers were all discussing this matter. The emperor looks so spirited. Yeah, I heard that last night was finally a blessing for the empress, a great blessing for the country. However, the little eunuch next to the emperor doesn't look energetic. The level of personnel in the department is really getting lower and lower now. Lian had a gloomy face as he watched the courtiers walk away, his face filled with resentment. Nonsense, even the cows in the field can't handle it like this. 2 pieces of land that have not been loosened in many years. He can save his life as a cow, it's all thanks to God's mercy, okay. Li Gonggang, Li Gonggang. Lian turned around and saw a young eunuch running over with a hospitable expression on his face. What's going on? Congratulations to Duke Li for his promotion. The person in charge of the Jingshan room, named Wang Shi, will rely more on Duke Li's public relations photos in the future. Respecting the room. An Li frowned, what's it to me? Oh, you don't know yet. The emperor has just issued an edict, and you will become the chief steward of the imperial household department in the future. Chapter 6. This is difficult for strong people. You are listening at novel-full.audio. Lian was taken aback. No one notified me about this either. However, it can be seen that whether it is ancient or modern, there is a universal principle. To ascend, one must first sleep. Wang Shi saw that Lian was still sitting still, so he quickly picked up the person and hurriedly tidied up his appearance for him. The official announcing the decree is coming soon, please wait for it as soon as possible. Speak of the devil. Before even the end of the sentence could be heard on this side, someone walked over and shouted at the door in the sharp voice unique to eunuchs. An Li regained his senses and quickly knelt down to take the order. After a scolding, An Li took the private seal of the head of the clean room and officially took office. The eunuchs around naturally couldn't do without a burst of congratulations. General Manager Li, we will congratulate General Manager Li on his promotion when we come back. However, we cannot delay him any longer at the moment. The Emperor has requested General Manager Li to come over now. An Li was taken aback. Speaking of which, the Emperor hasn't explained it yet. He narrowly escaped death the day before yesterday, and almost died under the peony flower last night. Today, he was promoted and made a fortune, and now he has to go to the Emperor to seek his life. These 3 days and 2 nights have been more exciting than his previous life. Lian walked cautiously to the Emperor's bedroom. The door opened and An Li entered alone, only to see the hollow and empty hall, with no living creatures except for a wisp of white smoke rising from the incense burner. Lian leaned his head and often looked inside. The next second, a cold light flashed from his side, and a long sword landed on Lian's shoulder, carrying a strong killing intent. Don't move. The Empress shouted loudly, and An Li immediately cooperated and stopped moving. The sword followed the person's turn, and the Empress gradually walked from the darkness to An Li, looking at him with a gaze that scrutinized the prisoner. Tell me, who the hell are you? Lian put on a dog-like appearance and flattered, I am your servant, Emperor. Nonsense, I have someone cut your tongue. Lian saw that she was not joking and that it was impossible for her to just muddle through, so he explained seriously, Your Majesty, I am just a little thief. I accidentally entered this palace and was caught by you. I also want to walk away from my innocence. The Empress was momentarily stunned when she heard this, and a blush flew over her face. She wanted to refute, but didn't know how to refute, so she could only let An Li say so. Then I had the misfortune to bump into the Empress's mother's hand again. You said, she is the Empress, so naturally she asked me to do whatever I wanted, and I did whatever I wanted. The Empress narrowed her eyes slightly and said, so tell me what the Empress asked you to do. An Li's mind was spinning rapidly, searching for the wonderful answer from his body's past memories. This Empress Liang Qingyun ascended to the throne under the name of her elder brother, enduring hardships for so many years. She is definitely not a mediocre person. Currently, everything is just forced by the situation, and she cannot deceive or offend herself. After thinking for a moment, Lian said sincerely, it's just to ask the servant to look at the Emperor, find the right time, and ask you to accompany the Empress in the ups and downs, and conceive the dragon seed as soon as possible. The Empress saw that Lian's expression remained calm and there was no sign of panic. Her beautiful eyes narrowed and she said coldly, you are not afraid that I will kill you. Lian turned around and grabbed the head of the long sword in the Empress's hand, pulling it a bit towards his neck. The Empress panicked for a moment and quickly withdrew her long sword. The sharp blade of the sword cut through An Li's palm, leaving a long red mark that pained meticulously. The Empress looked at him in surprise and said, are you crazy? Lian said, Your Majesty, you said you wouldn't really take my life, but you wanted my loyalty, that's why you're here to scare me. Leaving aside the fact that the Empress is familiar with Li An's body now, she has started a meat business here. If she wants to become a nun again, it is basically impossible. Therefore, Li An is still useful and cannot be killed. Just talk about the appointment of the head of the clean room just now, it's like a gold medal to avoid death. Since he has been promoted, that's to use him, not to kill him. At present, everything is just a scare to him. But your majesty, the loyalty of this courtier was not intimidated. You used the wrong method. The Empress snorted coldly, glanced at the bloodstains on her sword, and looked up at An Li a bit. In fact, this one is not only a scare, but also a test of the courage of this Liang. After all, loyalty is not enough to deal with powerful officials and their relatives. If one lacks courage and courage, even the most loyal person will only become a bad pot of mouse droppings, unable to stay. However, in the short term, it was considered preliminarily qualified. The Empress lost her long sword and said, "Do you know why I asked you to be the manager of this clean room?" After thinking for a moment, An Li replied, "In order to serve the Empress in the future." "Yes, neither." The Empress pretended to be mysterious and her tone of voice became unpredictable. She took a step forward and said in a voice that only she and An Li could hear, "I want you to serve the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, and the 70.2 concubines." Li An dreamily looked up. This is to entrust him to take care of her big and small wives. Is this okay? An Li said with a guilty heart. If it's not possible, it's also possible. The Empress looked serious, the news of favoring the Empress has been released. I must balance the power of various factions, and the Empress cannot be solely favored. Otherwise, there will be chaos in the previous dynasty, and the matter of the heir will become even more troublesome. Emperor's heir. Yes, the crown prince must not have been born by the Empress, said the Empress. She cannot spend her entire life being controlled by powerful officials and external relatives in the state of Daliang. Only when the bloodline of the imperial heir is pure, will the power of the relatives in the future not further expand, and when they make a move in the future, they will not be burdened by family ties and bloodline. If the Empress is only favored and has no offspring for a long time, it will increase suspicion in the imperial court. Therefore, more people can only be called to share the favor in order to reduce the possibility of the Empress getting pregnant. At this point, the Empress raised her eyes and looked at An Li with complexity. You. Li An felt a chill in his pants as he saw her staring at the middle of his legs. What does it mean? You have to ensure that you cannot make the Empress pregnant, but you cannot make her notice yet. After all, I really cannot ask the Empress to take the avoiding sun decoction. Li Anton exploded when he arrived. Your Majesty, this is not something that only slaves can control. I don't care about this. If you make the Empress pregnant, then you will have to bear the consequences. Think it out yourself. An Li thinks this is just putting ducks on the shelves. He figured out what was useful, but couldn't refuse, he could only follow suit. Li Andan is one head and too big. It's impossible to invent a condom in ancient times. Chapter 7. The palace also needs hype. You are listening at novel-full.audio. In the Red Wall Palace, An Li, dressed in a 4-clawed python robe, sat on a pear-wood rocking chair, swaying and swaying. He bit on a weed in his mouth, frowning and pondering from time to time, and then sighing up to the sky, calling on many palace maids and eunuchs who came and went to take a second look. Our manager has a certain aura, he looks mysterious and unpredictable. As soon as the manager came up, he asked us to take over the roster of the palace ladies, and without saying a word for a long time, he just sighed. I guess he just can't read, and he's too embarrassed to ask. He's worried. This was ordered by the emperor himself. It's so beautiful. You don't know. Today, everyone in the palace is discussing our newly arrived general. How could such a powerful person not recognize words? Go and go aside. Of course, An Li didn't hear any of these words, and his mind was full of how to call himself out of reach at this moment. Lian thinks he is really miserable. He is also a time traveler. Why do others call for wind and rain? He just thinks about how to survive every day. Hey! Crossing. Lian's mind suddenly lit up. In this past life costume drama, there are not so many ways to make a concubine pregnant. Can't he just learn from scratch? An Li instantly remembered the scene in a classic palace drama where musk was added to the spices used for the consort, and the latter immediately became infertile. Without waiting for much thought, An Li found someone to spend a lot of money to buy back a lot of musk, and ordered someone to hire a fragrance master in the palace to make a fragrant spice with a good taste. An Li didn't even bother to think much about his name, so he simply named it Huanyixiang. Everything is ready, only the east wind is needed. But what An Li never expected was that he was just inferior to the east wind. Why should I take this risk on your behalf? This is already your own business. The Empress spoke shamelessly and confidently, which made Lian feel a bit dazed. Isn't it only when you give the Empress this kind of spice that she will naturally use it, and it will be difficult for her to conceive without realizing it? Lian thinks his logic is very reasonable. Who knew the Empress would calmly say, "What if something happens in one day?" Lian was stunned. He finally understood the Emperor's meaning. If something happened, his servant's life could stop the Empress and the courtiers in front of him. After all, the Emperor had no hand in it. Even if they suspect that it was the Emperor's instruction, it is of no use. But if we directly issue an order to bestow incense, this nature will change. Lian really admires this behavior of killing the donkey before the mill is unloaded. He couldn't help but give the Empress a thumbs up. Your Majesty. Lian saw that he didn't have much qualifications to force himself, so he could only sell out. At least I'm going to make things difficult for you. You can't just throw my life away like this. Am I the kind of heartless and introverted master? The Empress finished speaking and turned around to clap her hands. I saw a person suddenly fall from somewhere in the originally silent hall. This person has an ordinary appearance and is the kind of person you can't remember even after looking at him in the crowd. But the faint aura between his eyebrows was somewhat eye-catching. Although it couldn't be seen without careful examination, as if he was intentionally covering it up, once he noticed it, he couldn't move his eyes away anymore. Qing Lu, this person will be your master from now on. Come and acknowledge him, the Empress ordered. Yes, the man clasped his fists and looked up at Lian. An Li felt that this glance was not like recognizing the master, but rather like recognizing the enemy. Qing Lu has seen her master. An Li looked at the Empress inexplicably. The latter nodded in satisfaction and then explained, "This is the shadow guard that I have trained around me, the little commander of the Black Feather Guard, Qing Lu. I know that everything I ask you to do is reckless, so I am giving you this green willow. Being by your side can help you solve many problems, and in times of danger, it can also save your life." Upon hearing this, Lian felt that the Empress had finally done something. However, he usually comes and goes in the palace. He's such a big old man following behind the butt of a eunuch like me. I'm afraid he might catch people's attention. If someone with a heart finds out something, then it won't be good. Don't worry, the reason why shadow guards are called shadow guards is because their presence is extremely low, like a person's shadow that is difficult to detect. After speaking, the Empress turned around and softly called out, "Green willow." The next second, the person who was originally bowing and waiting on the side suddenly flashed and disappeared in front of An Li. Lian looked up for a while, but surprisingly, he couldn't find where Lian had gone. Lian finally calmed down. Having such a bodyguard to protect oneself is much more reassuring. However, after leading this big baby out for a long distance, An Li only realized later that the most important thing had not been resolved. How on earth can this spice be sent to the queen for her to use, and how can she avoid being implicated? Lian was pondering when he could hear the voice of a woman coming from behind the rockery ahead. "Oh, don't cry anymore. There's no need to turn around and ask someone to hear it. It's rumored that Shui Guifei heard it and beat her up again. The palace maid sobbed and stopped, holding back tears as she struggled with words. Beat me like this, what should such a servant do? That material was originally chosen by the Empress Dowager. The material from the Internal Affairs Office may have left 1.5 horses for Consort Shu. But now, the Empress Dowager has gained great favor, and everyone in the palace is rushing to flatter her. The Internal Affairs Office didn't have much material this time, and they wished they had emptied it for the Empress Dowager. She knew she wouldn't come, so she insisted that we go and get it, and then go back and get beaten by her. It's useless for us to say anything, but she's just angry that the Empress has been favored and wants to vent her anger on us. The other person hurriedly said, "Oh, don't say anything. If you say anything more, I dare not stay with you anymore." The two of them chatted a few more words, but dared not say more. After tidying up briefly, they hurriedly left together. Liang propped his chin and listened to the complaints of these two palace maids, but he kicked him awake. Since it's not possible to send this thing to the queen, ask her to use it. Then ask her to come and fetch it herself, come and beg. In that case, if something happens later, there won't be anyone who harmed her, right? After all, it's what she asked for herself to use. When Ong Li thought of this, a cunning smile couldn't help but appear on his lips. In that case, let's have a palace hype. Give it the price of this, cut off offspring and have no descendants, spice. Chapter 8. Playing the Pig. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. To hype up, there must be gimmicks. Liang went back and pondered all night before finding a satisfying hype point. When the sky was dimly lit, a carriage secretly left the palace and did not return until it was clear. Ong Li still relies on his rocking chair, swaying in the sun to get by. The biggest benefit of wearing this is becoming a boss, being able to command others to do work and not having to do it yourself. Jingshi Fang is not very big, but his subordinates are also in charge of many people. One of them is quite clever, named Xiao Anzi. Since Ong Li came over, he has been busy tidying up and arranging for him, and his mouth is also tight. Ong Li usually likes to send him to do things. But today he was asked to ask the director of the Internal Affairs Office, Zhao Minghai, for the materials needed to purchase a new green badge, but he hasn't returned for a long time and has been away for an hour. The servant who was waiting next to him to buy something had long been waiting, suffering from having nothing to do and unable to take action. He could only eagerly wait in front of Liang. This defense disturbed even Ong Li's good dreams. Liang reached out and took down the book that was covering his face, frowning and saying, "Where did this guy go to play again?" As soon as the words fell, Xiao Anzi crawled back, looking at him from afar with a wounded expression on his face. Liang sat up and frowned as he approached, asking, "I asked you to go to the Internal Affairs Office to get something, not to steal something from the treasury. Why are you still being beaten up?" Xiao Anzi covered his face and said, "That Zhao Minghai, I'm afraid he won't be favored by you. He's a red-eyed bastard who has deliberately made things difficult several times when he asks for things. This time, he directly asked the servant to wait at the door, saying that there are other urgent matters waiting in the palace and he doesn't pay attention to them. I thought it was okay to wait, as soon as I received the item, so I asked a few more questions about when to wait. Is there a definite answer? What did that person say?" Ong Li asked as he heard that Xiao Anzi had not made any mistakes so far. "Zhao Minghai didn't look up to me and felt that I didn't deserve to talk to him, but the scumbags who followed him came forward to push me, saying what kind of person I am, and also asking the speaker. After explaining a few words, I said, I contradict and then beat me up. So Zhao Minghai didn't say anything." Ong Li narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. "He's just watching from the side." Xiao Anzi's face turned pale with anger, and she paused in her speech. "What else are you saying? In this palace, don't think that going far for a moment is forever. If you don't match your virtue, you will rise and fall heavily. Tell everyone to watch carefully, and don't let everyone see what's going on as a person. This clearly means you. An Li sneered. It's not that this little Shunzi is stirring up trouble. Zhao Minghai's words are indeed cursing him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given him this embarrassment. Lian reached out and patted Xiao Shunzi's face, who frowned in pain. What do you mean? Should we go find an imperial physician to see and take some medicine for you? Xiao Shunzi covered his face and chuckled, thank you very much, sir. It's just that we're living a low life. We're used to being beaten and punished on a daily basis. Those with rough skin and thick flesh will be fine tomorrow, it won't be a problem. After finishing speaking, Xiao Shunzi's eyes rolled and he said, Master, don't be angry. Zhao Minghai was originally the person who followed the Empress, supported by the Empress and the father.in.law. Naturally, he is not afraid of anything. Recently, many lords of the harem have also looked up at Zhao Minghai, who is skilled in handling affairs. It is normal for him to look down on us. An Li glanced at him and sneered, you kid, if you want to persuade me to vent my anger on you, just say it directly. I can't even understand the twists and turns. Xiao Shunzi chuckled and waited on the side. Lian turned his head and caught a glimpse of a golden Nanmo box lying on the table. He reached out and picked it up. Let's go, the Ministry of Internal Affairs will turn around and send a big gift to our director Zhao. I'm worried about not being able to find anyone. Since you bumped into it yourself, you can't blame me. The palace is full of red walls and green tiles, and the temple is high. Xiao Shunzi led the way ahead and passed through 3 palaces, 4 courtyards, and 5 broken gates before finally reaching the entrance of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. If we were to say that this Internal Affairs office is the place in charge of the entire palace's logistics, it is luxurious. Just looking at the 2 pairs of stone lions at the entrance is much larger than the place where Lian works. Many people came and went at the entrance, all sent by the lords of each palace to demand things. Depending on the power and status of their respective lords, the expressions of joy and anger on the faces of these servants varied. There was a hint of arrogance on his face. If it weren't for wearing the clothes of a maid, he would have looked like half a master. Some have a thin anger on their faces, as if they have suffered immense injustice. As Lian walked inside, he caught a glimpse of several eunuchs at the door watching him. He turned his head and ran inside, apparently to report a message. As expected, as soon as Lian entered, he saw Zhao Minghai standing at the entrance of the main hall of the Internal Affairs office, holding a flower name booklet, teaching several servants a lesson. You guys are blind. A few days ago, when the master praised you a few times, he treated you like a person, right? I'm telling you, I'm teaching you a lesson for your face, not to one day raise your tail to the sky, let the emperor see it, and even cut your head together. Xiao Shunzi leaned over and sneered, look, he told us again. You are a big understanding. An Li glanced at him, took a step forward, and spoke loudly. Oh, what's wrong with General Manager Zhao? What inconspicuous thing has made you angry during the day, General Manager Zhao? Zhao Minghai looked up at him, closed the booklet and didn't look at him directly. It's that inconspicuous thing, thinking you're a character and daring to show off in front of me. Lian turned his head to look at the eunuch kneeling on the ground, chuckled lightly, and kicked his foot directly into the man's heart. The young eunuch was unprepared and suffered a heartfelt blow from An Li. He flew out 1 meter away and fell to the ground, his face pale and he couldn't breathe for a long time. Zhao Minghai was startled by Lian's action and instinctively took a step back. Lian, what are you doing? It's nothing, it's just that seeing such an inconspicuous servant make Director Zhao so angry, it's hard for me to calm my anger without kicking a few times. After speaking, An Li stepped forward with a smile on his face and continued speaking. Director Zhao, after all, we are one heart. If you get angry here, I will naturally follow suit. It's not just today, but from now on, in this harem, if anyone dares to make Director Zhao unhappy, I don't know anyone else, but I, Ong Li, am the first to refuse. Chapter 9. Eating Tigers. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Zhao Minghai looked at Lian's fawning and obsequious expression, and for a moment, he couldn't bring himself to his senses. He was also afraid that Ong Li would be favored and threaten his position, which is why he deliberately made things difficult and wanted to give Ong Li a boost. By the way, let the servants in the whole palace see clearly that Zhao Minghai is the master of the harem. I thought that Ong Li came so quickly to give an explanation for what happened just now, but who knew it was like this, and instead, he made Zhao Minghai somewhat confused. Just reaching out and not hitting the smiling person, with Ong Li's attitude, although Zhao Minghai didn't know if he was sincere or insincere, he couldn't keep his face cold and called someone into the room. The two of them sat down, and Zhao Minghai gave him a tap and asked, "It's been a big day. I heard that there have been quite a few things going on in the Jingshan recently. Li Gongdong has just taken office, so he probably has a lot of things waiting to be dealt with. Why do you have time to come to my place?" When Zhao Minghai asked these words, he had already instructed someone to prepare the materials for making the green-headed card early, just waiting for Lian to speak and have someone take the things away. After all, Ong Li is also acting according to orders, and procrastination once or twice is enough. After a long time, when the emperor asks for forgiveness, he also feels uncomfortable. Just to my surprise, this time Ong Li's answer once again surprised Zhao Minghai. "Actually, there's nothing wrong with it. I just got something good. Thanks to the emperor's promotion recently, I haven't come to see your elderly family since I became the manager of the Jingshan room. I feel a bit guilty and brought this thing to apologize." Zhao Minghai heard this but showed little interest, as if he didn't think he could come up with anything good. Lian turned around, and Xiao Anzi arched his body and placed the golden Nanmo box that had been brought all the way in Lian's hand. "That's it." Zhao Minghai glanced at it but paused. "Not to mention anything else, that box is actually very good. It's made of top-quality golden Nanmo, and not to mention the things inside, this box alone is worth a lot of silver." Zhao Minghai's face finally showed some joy. He reached out and opened it, only to find a brocade sachet inside, carrying a faint fragrance. "Is this spice?" Lian said, "Yes. Director Zhao, don't underestimate this spice. Haven't you heard of a story circulating in the capital?" Zhao Minghai frowned and said, "I've never heard of it. This kind of spice is called Huani fragrance, which was passed down from the western regions. Legend has it that if this spice can be burned for a long time and smelled by women day by day, it can attract their lovers who can never leave them, and increase the chance of conception." At first, Zhao Minghai listened attentively, but when he heard it behind him, he chuckled and sneered. "I can't believe you still believe these folk rumors. At first, I didn't believe it either, but it is said that someone took out this item from the Chaoyun Pavilion, the largest flower tower in the capital, last night, claiming it was for auction to boost the mood. At first, people didn't take it seriously and thought it was some kind of scam. But who knew, there was that knowledgeable person who directly sold 1,000 taels of gold." "How much?" Zhao Minghai was stunned. 1,000 taels of gold. Zhao Minghai's fox-like eyes flickered and flickered before finally laughing. "Aren't you fabricating these lies to coax this old man into playing? Do you think I can be someone like this?" Lian sighed and placed the spice on the table. He turned around and said something to Xiao Anzi, who nodded and then retreated. "Director Zhao, we are also a poor child. We have just received some rewards from the emperor, and we are not a wealthy owner. This thing has spent all of my family's money. If it weren't for the emperor's reward, the East Pearl is really huge and beautiful, worth a lot of money, I wouldn't have been able to exchange it. If there's nothing real, can I be willing to spend so much money?" As the words fell, Xiao Anzi held a plate with some clean water inside and walked in, placing it on the table in front of the two. Lian took out some of the spices, boiled them with water, and handed them to Zhao Minghai. The latter leaned over and only sniffed lightly, feeling a slight pain in the lower body and a feeling of dryness and heat on the body. Although he is a eunuch, he has also been a man, so he naturally knows that this situation is an emotional response. Is it really so magical? Zhao Minghai was now somewhat skeptical. Lian smiled and said, if it weren't for me, would I be willing to spend so much silver? However, you are a eunuch, what do you want this thing for? Zhao Minghai asked. An Li smiled and took another from his waist. It was still the same spice as what was in the golden Nanmo box. I don't treat you as an outsider either. To be honest with you, people like us don't need this thing. But if we give it to the Empress, do you think there will be less glory and prosperity in the future? I'll give you half of this spice, and I'll go and offer it to the master soon. You just wait for my good news. After speaking, An Li stood up and pretended to leave, but was stopped by Zhao Minghai. Why are you in such a hurry? You haven't finished speaking yet. Zhao Minghai glanced at Lian and leaned over with a sincere expression on his face. Since you don't treat me as an outsider, then let's just say something heartfelt to you. As the saying goes, wealth and prosperity are all in danger. You only see this part of wealth, but how come you didn't think of the danger involved? What's so dangerous about this? An Li looked innocent and innocent. I ask you, where does this thing come from? I bought it. Who did you buy it from? Where are these people now? You may have found them. Of course it's not possible, said An Li. It's just a passing businessman who only bought things when he saw more things from the north and south. I think he's already on the road to make a living by now, where can he find anyone else? That's it. Zhao Minghai said, if this thing really is so magical, you naturally have unlimited wealth and wealth. But if this thing is not so useful, or even harmful, how can you bear the charge of murdering the Empress at that time? Upon hearing this, An Li's face turned pale in an instant. Is this so serious? Zhao Minghai chuckled lightly and said, are you really young? Do you think the wealth and status in this palace are so easy to come by? It's very dangerous. Lian sat in the same spot, pondered for a while, then hesitated and said, so what should I do? Just throw it away. Since I have already bought something, there is no reason to throw it away. After all, it's not a cheap item. Zhao Haiming touched his chin, seeming embarrassed before sighing for a while. Alright, let me take you on a trip. Chapter 10. Medical Women. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Can you go for me? An Li had a clear understanding of the dog's caution in his heart, but his face still looked ignorant and ignorant. If the Empress blames me, what should I do? I can't deceive you, the general manager. Zhao Minghai smiled and said, you and I are really different. Oh. Is that right? Is it difficult? Did you get the green eye of the Empress? An Li asked closer. Zhao Minghai was about to speak when he paused at the edge of his mouth. Looking at An Li's devilish and shrewd demeanor, he was shocked in his heart. I almost got this little rabbit to wrap around me. If one claims to be the Queen's confidant, it is equivalent to betraying the Emperor. After all, they all work for the Emperor, who is their main boss. Getting too close to the Empresses in the harem is a big taboo. At this point, Zhao Minghai's words turned and his mouth became clear, what a blue-eyed person. I was just doing my best to serve the lords in this harem as ordered by the Emperor. However, as I have been serving for a long time, the lords of each palace naturally know my loyalty. Even if there is something really wrong, they will not think that I am trying to harm the lords. I am not like you, I have no knowledge at all, so the lords naturally dare not believe me. An Li cursed this old and immortal thief dozens of times in his heart. This lies up so poorly, it's almost a blatant act of robbery. Fuck him. I think the servants in this harem are usually hindered by the old man's lewd power. Otherwise, even An Li's childhood homeroom teacher wouldn't be fooled by this lies-making skill, and he would still be living in this palace. An Li thought to himself, but his face was filled with joy. Director Zhao is really taking care of me. But if this thing really has any use, you must be a servant in front of the Empress. When donating treasures, don't. Lian chuckled and looked like a villain, don't say it's you alone. Zhao Minghai chuckled lightly, very disdainful. He reached out a pair of withered hands to search for the other half of the spice left in An Li's hand, along with the one in the golden nano box in front of him. Our family is not that kind of person. Our family in this palace is at the end of the line. What's there to compete with you, a lowly bastard? It's just a pity that you're young and have no roots. I don't want to see you put this damn life into it. Upon hearing this, An Li quickly bowed and said, then let's thank Manager Zhao. From now on, I will point my fingers at you for all the glory and wealth. Lian didn't rush to leave after finishing the task. He stayed behind to praise Zhao Minghai to the point where he didn't know who he was. Matey smoked 3 big cigarettes in a row before turning his head and leaving the Internal Affairs office. As soon as he came out of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Xiao Anzi leaned forward and said, how could you have been deceived by this grandson? This is Kuang Yu. When he comes back to the Empress, he must not mention you at all, taking all the credit on himself. This kind of mess, this old thing has done it more than once. I know, An Li smiled, I'm just afraid he'll mention me. For this reason, An Li emphasized several times that he should remember to mention his name in front of the queen and not bite to death. It was Zhao Minghai's own idea. Because he knew that the more he said that, the more Zhao Minghai wanted to clean up his Lian. Do you know you returned it to him? There's no way to walk by the river without getting your shoes wet. If you do this too much, you'll end up flipping over. An Li patted Xiao Anzi's head and said, look. Not long after Lian returned, he heard that Zhao Minghai had gone to the imperial palace. An Li is not in a hurry either, just sleeping on his own turf. At night, when it was getting dark, his job came. Flip through the top green cards and decide who will take care of the dormitory. But the new one hasn't been made yet, so An Li had to carry the old green card to the Empress's palace. At that time, Liang Qingyun was reviewing the memorials and superstitions of the courtiers, and when he looked up and saw Lian coming in, he felt annoyed. Don't flip it today, go down. The palace maid on the side reminded her somewhat awkwardly, Your Majesty, according to the rules, you have to flip. Today is the full moon of the 15th lunar month. According to the rules in the palace, when the 15th month is full, the emperor must spend time in the Empress's palace. Even if she had to go to the Empress's palace to read a memorial overnight before, the Empress had to go there to read it, otherwise it would cause criticism from the courtiers. The Empress lost her pen and stood up, nodding on An Li. You come with me, she said, yes. When the two of them arrived at the Empress palace, the Empress was already waiting at the door. At this moment, the Empress was looking at the Emperor with a youthful expression on her face. Your Majesty, you have come. I am really anxious waiting for you, my concubine. The Queen's voice was so seductive that it almost dripped out of the water. An Li's nose twitched slightly, and in an instant, he could smell a faint familiar scent from the Queen's body. Lian turned his head to look inside the main hall and indeed saw the curling white smoke floating in the purple-golden 9-phoenix incense burner, indicating that there were spices burning inside. Emperor, let's go in. The Empress tugged at the Empress's sleeve and walked inside. An Li was supposed to keep up, but was pinned outside the door by the Empress. You are all waiting at the door. I will be here tonight to review the memorial. Don't disturb my peace. After speaking, he gave a meaningful glance at An Li. An Li understood in his heart that there was no need to open the warehouse to release grain tonight. Just looking at the Empress on the side again, after hearing a few words in the memorial, her whole face turned pale, it was a desire for dissatisfaction. The Empress saw clearly, but didn't say anything. I don't know why, but she really doesn't really want to have An Li serve the queen all the time, and there's always a strange feeling in her heart. I can't say it, it's always uncomfortable. So the Empress Dowager instinctively made a decision to serve as the sleeping queen. One less time is won. Lian stood at the door, and when he saw the door closed, his eyes glanced around the yard. I saw that the palace of this empress was truly magnificent, either because her family was tough and straight. This extravagance can no longer be described as extravagance, it is simply extravagance and waste, more luxurious than the emperor's palace. Lian was looking around like a thief, wondering if he could ask for a reward and sell some money if he had the chance to turn around. After all, he was really not well off, so he looked up and met the female doctor walking across from him. An Li remembers that this woman was brought by the empress's father from outside to treat the emperor's incompetence. However, he didn't take it seriously before, and this was the first time that An Li had looked at this female doctor seriously. Don't say it, it looks pretty good at first glance. There is a unique charm.